this conference does is entrepreneurs are speaking to entrepreneurs. And you're really seeing a whole change in this environment.
We thought it'd be fun if we had a festival environment where all these different groups could host events.
And I think that the conference helps facilitate those discussions, and if hopefully if we can get a couple entrepreneurs off the bench and into starting their companies, I think we will accomplish something.
The Forward Festival is here, and you will hear about it this morning on For the Record. Good morning, I'm Neil Heinen. As you will hear, the festival is growing and has a couple of new twists this year. What's not changing is the underlying premise of Forward, entrepreneurism in its many guises. My guests this morning are two entrepreneurs and co-founders of Forward Festival, Matt Yonkel, co-founder of Murphy, and Brian Chan, co-founder and president of SuperNet Communications. And joining me this morning is Grace Edquist, associate editor and web editor of Madison magazine, who covers, among other things, the Madison business sector, especially the new economy sector and tech sector. Grace, welcome. Thank you guys both very much. I know you've both been on the show before, so it's nice to have you back to talk about this year's festival. But even though it's been like 5 years, Matt, let's assume that a fair number of people are still not familiar with Forward, and maybe you can just, in the context of where we are today, give us a little history.
Sure. Well, it started 5 years ago. 2010 was our first year, and the goal was to, I guess, just have a conference. So we decided we'd put on a conference by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. That was kind of the thing, something in town we thought was missing, was just having something that was
You know, if I can
us.
interrupt, go back 5 years. Why all of a sudden was it time to have a conference?
Well, there's another one of us, Nate Lustig, who had come back from Austin, Texas. He was at South by Southwest.
Gotcha.
And he said, you know, the energy there is terrific. I met so many great people, and I'd love to pull everybody in Madison together. And so I sat down with Nate, and he said, well, you know, I said, South by Southwest was decades in the making. It just doesn't happen overnight. What did you have in mind? He said, well, let's just put on a conference. And so we got to work on that, and I reached out to Brian because of his work with High Tech Happy Hour and just all of his connections. He's one of the best connected entrepreneurs in Madison. I said, how can we go about doing this? And then there was a fourth person, Preston Austin, who I'd been working with at Murphy, that put forth the idea of the festival, because there was a high-tech happy hour event that was going on, there was an Accelerate Madison event, and we started looking at it and saying, well, all these entrepreneurs are all kind of in their own silos. We have sort of there's Merlin, and there's Accelerate, and there's Magnet, and all these kind of silos. But so one time out of the year, let's see if we can break down the silos and get everybody together. And that was sort of the birth of the Forward Festival. Back then we called it the Forward Technology Festival.
I like the idea that you're one of the most plugged-in people around Brian. But that would suggest that even 5 years ago, there were at least informal conversations among entrepreneurs and people interested in this sector.
Yeah, well, we think, you know, Madison is a fantastic place to start and grow a business, and the buzz just keeps building and building. And I think for me personally, it was just a way to give opportunity back to the community. But yeah, we've been doing the High Tech Happy Hour and Accelerate Madison and Merlin Mentors. So there were a lot of things going on that were not necessarily connected, but they could have been. So we saw this as a great opportunity to cross-promote all those events and people, as well as Biotech Happy Hour, things like that. So yeah, like I said, Madison is just a fantastic place to be growing a business right now, and we want to make sure that everyone is aware of that opportunity and keep building this momentum that we've helped create.
Maybe just one more contextual piece before we start getting into some details, but the idea that this was the Forward Technology Festival and it's now the Forward Festival. What's the significance of that?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's ever really been named correctly. So that was one of the things when you're sort of, you know, sitting around at Jenna's having beers and like naming
What should we name this?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the. So it was never really about the technology. It was always about the entrepreneurs. And as it's grown, and one of the neat things about the festival and the format is it's very open. So anybody can host an event. The only two conditions are that it'd be an open event, so it can't be limited to members of a certain club or a certain organization. And the other criteria is that the event cross-promotes the festival, and then the festival will promote that event. So we kind of get the network effect of promotion as things get bigger. So the technology was there, and it was kind of this awkward kind of piece because we'd had people that said, you know, I just tuned it out because I'm not starting a tech business. I'm starting a food business, or I'm into music, or I'm into, you know, these great creative, innovative people that we'd love to have at these events were sort of tuning us out. And so this year we decided to make the big switch and just kind of shorten it to Forward Fest. And we've got some great new events on the docket, one involving food entrepreneurship. We've got some music stuff on it this year. So so far, so good.
I invite you on the show and then I don't let you ask a question. I've got one more, one more here. Just so people know, what does it look like? I mean, physically, what does this look like over 8 days?
Oh, well, it's great. I mean, I don't know that we've ever been to every single event together, but I was kind of reminded when we were setting up with Matt. It's sort of like being in college again, where you get to see all of your friends over and over again every day of the week, and certainly that's true of Matt and I. But no, it's very friendly. It's very happy. There's a buzz about it. There's an energy. It's just exciting, and you know, being around young entrepreneurs. Well, not that we're young entrepreneurs, but but younger entrepreneurs.
No, you still qualify, believe it or not. From my perspective.
Thank you. No, I mean it's great. I mean the energy, the enthusiasm, the optimism. Yeah, it's fun.
It's energizing, and it's a great time. So anybody that's thinking about starting a company, or that's just moved into Madison, that's sort of wondering what is this scene all about. Like, this is the week to be in town, because you will get hooked up with everybody in town that you need to get hooked up with in town to move forward with your business, move forward with your innovation. So this is the time, and it's great because the weather's nice. A lot of stuff is outside. There's a lot of social stuff. There's stuff that's a little more formal and a little more focused. So you get a little bit of everything.
Free beer. Yeah.
Lots of free beer.
Lots of free beer.
The Forward Festival. So we had our own beer this year.
Oh.
Actually, it's the second year.
Yep.
But Mob Craft, a nice local startup that does beer, is brewing a special batch, and that will be served throughout all the various Forward Fest events. So excited about that.
Everything that's great about Madison, being outside, being at the Union, being at the Monona Terrace. Yeah, it's really a showcase of everything that's great about Madison.
All right, Grace, hold on to your question. All right, we're going to come back. We're going to take a break, and we'll return to talk about Forward Festival right after this.
We're all going through similar kinds of things, so being here and getting that support of other entrepreneurs is fantastic.
So it has a feel of like it's going to be the next big thing in startup communities.
What we have going on here, I think, is very organic and very authentic. And I think that authenticity and the connections you make as a result of that authenticity are some of the most incredible connections you make.
We stole those sound bites right from the Forward Festival website, which I urge you to check out and get more information about Forward Festival, which is coming up. And my guest this morning, two of the co-founders of Forward Festival, Brian Chan, who's the president of SuperNet, and Matt Yonkel, who is the co-founder of Murphy. And Grace Edquist from Madison Magazine is with me this morning as well. Grace.
So one thing you guys talked about was that this is by entrepreneurs, for entrepreneurs, and I'm just wondering what is the importance of having that entrepreneur-to-entrepreneur interaction, sort of that peer-to-peer organizational planning? Why is that important for this kind of an event?
I think that's important because it keeps everything very fresh and relevant. The entrepreneurial landscape changes very rapidly. It can change very rapidly. And by having this open format where folks can host events, it can really be reflective of what's happening in the community. We can be very agile in terms of how everything comes together. And the other thing is, we're all really busy because we're all entrepreneurs, so we need help from lots of other people. And so it's a way to kind of recruit, and it's kind of it's a project of passion for many of us because we're all really busy. But it's a one time out of the year. Brian is busy running his company, I'm busy running my company, and it's a one time out of the year that we actually get to work together on something. And I get to work together with 38 other entrepreneurs in doing this. So it's just it's a ton of fun.
And I get that question, makes me think of what we talk about as the ecosystem around the startup community. But what about the general public? I mean, how does the public fit into this? Is a public event, right? Anybody's welcome to come.
Yep.
What's how does that fit?
Well, I just want to add to that last question too. I mean, I think it has the authenticity of it too. As entrepreneurs, we want to hear from other entrepreneurs, and I think hearing those war stories, hearing what works, what doesn't work, and just having that camaraderie, I think is really important to the festival. And I think there's a lot of people out in the public that do want to start companies or that are curious about it too. And I think this sort of gives them the courage to go out and look for those things and to see what a great support system that we do have. And like Matt said, I mean, it's for us, it's fun because it was like, wow, it would be great if we could start a company together, but we really don't have time to do that. But we have this 1 week where we can do this together, and we have 38 other organizers this year.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing.
Yeah, so it just keeps building and building, and it's just fun, and that's what entrepreneurism, and most of the time it's fun. It's a lot of work, but it's fun.
And you think you guys work well together? It's not a too many cooks in the kitchen thing where you're all trying to my event, this event, this event. It kind of works, I guess.
Yeah, it's worked so far. I mean, there's overlapping events, and so there certainly the events compete for attention. But I think that's a good thing to have that, because that just forces all of us to get better, to make sure that our events get better every year. So it's kind of that improvement sort of baked into the structure, which is good. I think for the general public, one of the things that we often see when we get, you'll see some people that come out to various pitch events or whatever that have never been there before, and they just have no idea what's going on with new companies, newly formed companies in and around Madison. And so this is a chance if you just kind of want to see what are the new types of companies that are being formed here, who are the entrepreneurs behind that, how do I get involved, like that sort of thing. That there are some events that showcase. So the startup showcase on the evening of the 27th at the Majestic there are 10 companies out of 40 that apply that are going to be on the big stage pitching, and it kind of gives a cross section of all the startup activity that's taking place here in Madison.
I think that's important because I don't want to oversell this, but this is to some degree shaping the future of this city. I mean, this is, for a lot of people who've been here a long time, a relatively new component of Madison, and yet it's growing very fast. And I think this festival highlights some of the diverse facets of the entrepreneurial community. But this is going to play a big role in what Madison looks like, and I think that's something that people should know about.
It certainly connects everything up that one time of the year, and there are a lot of people that do a lot of work with this year round. So no way should this festival sort of take the credit for doing like amazing, huge things overall. It's a year-long effort, multi-year effort. But it is a time where we can celebrate a little bit, we can kick back, we can have a beer. It's in late August, so in an entrepreneurial kind of world, that is a time where it's unlikely you're going to get a phone call back from an investor because they're probably on vacation. So it's a good time if we're going to do something else to go ahead and do it. And it's just it's a time where we can kind of come together as a community and sort of decide what should we be working on over the next year, what's missing, how can we be more inclusive as a community, how can we bring more great ideas forward and get companies started around those.
How broad is the reach? From how far will people come to this festival?
Yeah, we've got people from mostly the Midwest, Minnesota, Illinois, some people from California have stopped by, but it's mostly regional at this point, and it's growing organically. So it's not like we're reaching out to those communities either. That somehow they found us.
Yep.
So.
The Badger Startup Summit, one of the events, Tuesday the 26th, is the purpose of that event is actually to try to pull in Badgers. We use that term very loosely, not necessarily UW Badgers, but anyone with Wisconsin ties that are involved with startups, to pull them together, bring them back to Wisconsin just for that event. And so we do have some pull. We have the East Coast, West Coast, Chicago, throughout the Midwest. There are Badgers coming in for that event. And that's one where we're making a very concerted effort to pull people back to Wisconsin that have some roots here of some sort.
Both of those are really of interest to me, because I get the sense that this started out of some desire to keep people here, to recognize that Madison is a place that people like yourselves want to stay and want to tell other people, here's why we want to stay here. But then there are these relationships, this system of conversations that goes on that's important to maintain as well.
Yeah, for sure. I look at, you hear often about accelerator programs like Techstars and the network that they have, and I just look at the network that is Wisconsin and Badgers, the way they're all scattered all over the world, just brilliant people doing great things. And if we can just leverage that network alone in terms of bringing that talent, that skill set, those connections to capital, those connections to other great innovators, if we can leverage that network, it's a very, very powerful thing.
Why don't we talk about food and health when we come back right after this? Madison Magazine Associate Editor Grace Edquist and I are back with Matt Yonkel and Brian Chen, the co-founders of Forward Festival, which is coming up this week. And Matt, I was reading a piece, I think, in the Wisconsin State Journal, where you were quoted as talking about healthy, the importance of health. You know, that's something that entrepreneurs may not necessarily have top of mind as they're working to put together their businesses. That and the fact that food is a kind of a new emphasis this year kind of intrigued me.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. So at the Forward Tech Conference, so one of the sessions we're going to do TED Talk style talks. Focused around, I guess, I'll call it healthy entrepreneurship. So oftentimes as entrepreneurs, we get really wrapped up in our business. We don't start, we might not exercise as well as we should, might not sleep enough, we might not eat as well, because we're out, drinking, during Forward Fest and eating, all that other kind of thing. So, we have some experts in each of those topics to come out to kind of say, all right, as entrepreneurs, at least be aware of the trade-offs. Because I once heard, so if you succeed as an entrepreneur but die in the process, you really have failed. So you at least should be aware of the trade-offs of the sacrifices you're making, and aim to be an entrepreneur that is, that's healthy, mentally, physically, and strong, because that's how you're going to build the best company.
And for families too. I mean, I think there's a tremendous cost that we forget about sometimes when we're growing businesses, and that's our families and our personal lives and things like that, because we're so singularly focused in what we do sometimes. And I think so we've talked about that as a way that we want to give back too, is remember everything that, take a more holistic approach, I guess, and remember our families and our friends as well. So.
Yeah. It sounds like with the growth of Forward Tech Festival, one thing that you guys are working on is inclusivity and making sure that as many people as possible can be involved, both in planning but also attending these events. Can you guys talk a little bit about how you're working towards inclusivity?
Sure. I mean, there's the probably a correct stereotype of folks starting businesses are generally white and 20-something men, right? And there's nothing out there that says that young white males have a monopoly on all the good ideas and all the innovation that's out there. And I think Madison as a community is uniquely positioned to be able to be more inclusive in our entrepreneurial community. We're working with a new organization called the Diane Group. That is an organization to encourage entrepreneurship among women. And we're working with them. They're working with a number of the events to make sure that these events are being inclusive, that we're featuring women, that we're being as inclusive as possible. So that's sort of step number one, but it's going to be a long process because there is this kind of stereotype and perception, and we need to change that.
Brian, how big can this thing get? I mean, it's grown every year, right? I mean, do you have any kind of picture of the growth of this event?
No, I keep getting. I'm continually surprised at how many events keep getting added here. We actually shortened it this year. It's from 10 days. The number of days, but for some reason we actually have more events for fewer days. And to add to what Matt was saying earlier about diversity, and I think that's one of the things that Madison gets dinged on, is a lack of diversity. It doesn't have to be that way. I think there's a lot of women and minorities starting businesses all the time, and we just need to reach out to those people and make sure that they get recognized too, and create that support group. But as far as the growth of this thing, I don't know. It just keeps growing. I don't know that we've sat down and thought about, okay, it needs to be a certain size, but it just keeps growing. And I think again, it's just being authentic and having that buzz and energy we'll see.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
If you can put on your other hat for just a minute, there's a taste event that the magazine is doing,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, I think it's at Naughty Gal, and we've got a top shelf summer taste going on, and that's sort of in conjunction. You guys were talking about roping in food and local drink and music and things like that, and
Right.
I think the magazine's sort of part of that in that sense. On I think it's the 25th, Monday.
That's
the 25th.
on Monday the 25th. So during the day, there's the Edible Startup Summit, which is this is the first year for that particular event. There's a terrific entrepreneur, Philip Crawford, that's leading that charge. But that's for folks that are interested in starting food-based businesses. So Yum Butter, Tara's Way, like that sort of thing. We've got a whole day of folks talking about stuff, and then the idea is to sort of go from there to the Naughty Gal and kind of relax a little bit afterwards. So
Yeah, right on the
that'll be
lake too.
terrific. Yeah, exactly.
Not too bad.
So this is multiple venues. Best thing is probably people to go to the website to get an idea of the program. Is there a cost? I mean, was there a registration? How does the process work?
Yeah, so we have this year. There is a cost for a couple of the events. Most of them are free. They're all open to the public. We do ask that you register so that we can get a better head count of the people. But yeah, I guess we do have a pass this year that allows you to go to all the events for one fee.
Yeah, the events range in price from free to I think $75 for all day. And the events are really geared just to sort of cover their costs. So oftentimes there's food and event space. There's some of the stuff is at Monona Terrace or the Memorial Union, and so none of it. It's not like South by Southwest where it's $1,500 to get your badge. Here you can get a badge for it. Well, no, I don't think that's not very Madison, right? I don't think you can get very far. And the goal with this is not to be South by Southwest. The goal is to do something that's very Madison, very authentic to Madison. South by Southwest has been done. We're trying to do something here that's not that.
Yeah, we should have the majority of what's going on too is a volunteer effort. I mean, like Brian over there, and I mean I guess we do have a couple paid people, but for the most part, everything is a volunteer effort.
Yeah, I think that's important. There were a lot of volunteers. I mean, more than ever this year,
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. And we're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this.
Thank you.
So Grace and I thank Matt and Brian. Go to the Forward Festival website for information on the festival, and we'll see you next Sunday on For the Record.